We seem to be bombarded, brothers and sisters, increasingly by words. Everywhere we turn, whatever we look at, whatever we hear, there is continual verbiage. There is continual talking, writing, commenting, messaging. We have become an information society. And yet so much of what is said and what is written, so much of what is heard, so much of what is reported is of very little value. From mass media to social media, to our own conversations, to newspaper and magazine articles, online and printed, there has never seemed to be such a great amount of information for us to consume. And we do consume it. Every moment we seek to be informed or entertained or distracted. We cannot bear to be bored. Our brain needs to be stimulated in some way. But there is only so much of value that can be communicated, and so often our means of communication have become very superficial, shallow. They have become means of communicating our passions, our anger, our offense. They have become ways of insulting others, ways of trying to tear down rather than build up. And sometimes we all feel the need, I think, just to switch off. And because there's not enough buttons to switch off everything out there, we begin to switch off ourselves, to disconnect, to not want to know, to not want to listen, to not want to communicate, to not want to connect even with those people and with those things that we should be. Today, brothers and sisters, in the gospel reading, we heard of a farmer who went out to plant seed. The sower went out to sow his seed, says Jesus in this parable. And using non-mechanical methods of the time, he began to throw the seed around his field very liberally. Some of it fell on the road, some of it fell amongst the rocks, some of it fell amongst the thorns on the uncultivated land, and some of it fell on the land that had been cultivated and prepared to receive it. And Jesus tells us that the seed that fell on the road, because the road was hard and had been trampled down and traveled on for so long, it couldn't get into the soil. The birds came down and ate it. With the seed that fell among the rocks, there was a little bit of soil there that could receive it, and it grew for a little while, but there was not enough moisture or water, and eventually it died. Some seed fell amongst the thorns, and it grew, and they grew. And initially you could see there was a good plant growing, but after a while, thorns and weeds being what they are, they took over, they strangled and killed the good plant. But the seed that fell on the cultivated soil, on the land, that had been prepared by the farmer to receive it, well, the soil received it, it was watered, and over the year it grew and it multiplied and it gave forth a lot of fruit, Jesus tells us. And his disciples then turn and ask him, please explain this to us. What are you talking about? It's not just a farmer and his seed. And Jesus says, no. The seed, he says, is the Word of God, the words of God. And it is sowed or planted everywhere. God himself plants his seed, and he plants liberally. He throws it everywhere to be received by everyone in every place. But the soil is not the same everywhere. The hearts that are called to receive the Word of God are not equally prepared. And there are some, Jesus says, who are like the road that the seed fell on. They are hard. They have been hardened by their circumstances. They have been hardened by their choices. They have been hardened by the people around them. And they cannot receive the word. It comes to them, but they just push it away. They push God away. There are some people, he says, that are like the soil amongst the rocks. When the seed falls on them, when they hear the word of God, they receive it joyfully, gratefully. They become enthused by it. They actually want to live it out. And they begin their struggle and their journey towards God. But there are no roots. There is no depth there. And the moment something difficult comes along, the moment some trouble or trial or persecution or difficult choices that have to be made, they give up. And so the young plant of faith within them dies. And there are some people who are like the soil amongst the thorns. They too receive the word of God gratefully, enthusiastically, and they seek to live it out. But they don't do the hard work. They don't at the same time seek to change their life, to root out the sins and the passions within them. They want to have it both ways. They want God, but they want the world as well. And Jesus tells us that those are the people, he says, who are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of this life. And because they spend so much of their time and the focus on these other things, eventually the word of God within them withers away. But, he says, there are those people who, like the soil that has been cultivated, have prepared themselves. Their life has been a struggle, but they have made the right choices. Their life has been difficult, but they have sought to approach it and approach other people in the best and most positive way. So when they do hear the word of God, it resonates within them. They know from the depths of their being that what is spoken to them, that what is being proclaimed to them, what is being taught them, is actually true. They've already experienced it to some degree, but now they see its fulfillment, its fullness in the words that Jesus speaks to them. And they, Jesus says, with an honest and good heart, with much patience, allow the word of God to prosper and to grow within them. And over time, a long time, many years in fact, they begin to bring forth fruit, spiritual fruit. Brothers and sisters, we may find ourselves quite often in each of these four categories, usually more the first three than the last one. But we can see ourselves often with hardness of heart, often with fear at the challenges of life, often with cares and worries and ambitions that take us away from God. But when we hear the Word of God, when we hear the words of God, it has the potential to change us drastically, to change us for the better, to redirect our lives towards Him and towards His kingdom. We hear so many words today, brothers and sisters, so much information, so little, though, that is of value, so little that is lasting, so little that makes an impact, so little that matters. I think that if we did not have 90% of the information that we consume, it would not make one iota of difference to our lives. But the 1% that we need, the Word of God, which comes to us in so many different ways, but most especially and importantly from the Scriptures themselves, from the Bible. That is the Word that we should be listening to. We should pick up our Bibles. We should open our Bibles. We should read our Bibles. Because the Word that is there is eternal. It is a word of truth. It is a word that can open to us the meaning of life. The rest may assist us at best in this life. At worst, it will distract us from the very important things that we are called to do as people, to learn to love God and to love one another.